Okay, the purpose of this video is actually going to be to demonstrate how to set up a data table on the CALC 84 and then to get, for in this case, a histogram drawn for that data. And later on, I'll show how to do other types of statistical graphs. So the first thing I wanted to mention was we want to control what the widths of the bars are, which really means that we want to be able to control how wide each class is. So the data that I'm going to enter in is going to range from, it's going to be very uncreative data. It's just made up. It's going to range from a maximum of 55 down to a minimum of 10. I want to make 5 classes. So what I do to figure out how wide each class should be is I find the range for my data. In this case, 55 minus 10 is 45. I divide that by the number of classes, in this case 5, which gives me 9. Once I've done that, I'm always going to round up to the next integer, and that's just to ensure that your classes will capture all of your data. Then I will demonstrate for you on the calculator how to enter the data in and then how to get the graph to show these 5 classes on the calculator. All right, so let's jump over to the CALC 84. And I'm already in the mode that I'll use to enter the data, but let me show you how to get there. So find the Stat button on your calculator, click that. And then you'll see these menus, Edit, Calculate, Test, Statistics. You want the Edit menu, and we're going to choose Edit. A couple of different things I'm going to show you here. First of all, the list that you see here is very similar to what just a TI-84 will show you. Entering the data in is as simple as just typing in the numbers. So 10, enter, 15, enter, etc. One thing that's very different, and it's something that might kind of mess you up if you're using both the CALC 84 and a TI-84, is in order to clear a list completely, you're going to move all the way up to the header at the top of the list, in this case L1. On the TI-84, if you hit delete, it actually completely deletes that entire column on your calculator, and then you have to go back and do setup editor and get it back. On the CALC 84, to clear the list, you do hit delete. So that's what I'm going to do just to demonstrate it. But again, on a regular TI-84, hit clear, not delete. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and enter in my data. And so I'm going to do 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, 35, 40, 45, 50, and 55. And actually, so that actually is going to create a different range than what I said. Let's go back and recalculate. Oh, no, that is what I had. Okay. Okay, so there's my list. Now, what I'm also going to do, I want to demonstrate this to you also, is let's say instead of just having a list of data, we have some data, and then each one of those values occurs multiple times. So let's just say, for example, the number 10 just occurs once, the number 15 twice, 20 3 times, and so on. You get the idea. And then let's go back down again. So we'll end up with a fairly symmetric looking graph. I have to do 2 1s at the end to make this work. So these are frequencies with which each one of those numbers occurs. And so this is a really handy thing about the TI-84 or CALC 84, either one. All right. So how do we actually make it do our graph? So to get to the stat plot, find stat plot. It's the underneath the y equals button. So you hit the second y equals, and it takes you into this mode here. Now, we're going to work with plot 1. It'll be red, and we can do more than one plot at a time, but for now, just keeping it simple, we're just going to do this one. We're going to do a histogram. The data that I want to graph is in L1. So notice for X, I put in L1. For the frequency, I have the frequencies for each one of those values in L2, so I've chosen that. Now, if you didn't have an L2, if you just had, like 50 numbers in L1 and you were making a histogram with that, just choose 1 over here. And that just means each one of those numbers is just occurring once. Okay, but L2 is where my data is. All right. Now, the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to create my window. Well, let me show you what happens if I just hit graph. Okay. So if I hit graph, unless I still have the same, I had worked with this earlier, and so I may still have the window set up so that this comes out looking correct. But if I hit, nope, so yeah, it's still correct. Let me do zoom stat though and show you what happens. Well, now it's still looking fine. When I first did this, all it did was it made 10 individual bars that were sticking up, and so it wasn't doing at all what I wanted it to do. We do have to, in order for the graph to look like this, you're going to have to input some information. So I'm going to hit window. Window is what you want to go to. Our minimum value that we started off with was 10. Now our maximum value is just 55. So let's go ahead and actually override that, and then I'll show you how we can manipulate things to make it look the way we want it to. So let's set our X max at 55. Now for a Y minimum, you want to show a little bit underneath where the X axis is. So maybe set your Y minimum at -5-ish. And then your Y max, what you're wanting to do there is you're wanting to make sure that you show the tops of each of the bars. And so sometimes, you might set a Y max at too low of a value, but then you can play with the graph and make it work out. So to show you kind of what I mean by that, I'll set my Y max a little too small, too low, and then show you how to fix that. So let's say I put that at 3. And then finally, my X scale. My X scale is how wide I want each one of the bars. So that what I showed you at the very beginning on how wide to make the classes, when our range is 45 and we have 5 classes, 45 divided by 5 is 9, round up to 10. That's what that is. That's what the 10 is. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and hit graph. And so remember I was saying that, okay, if you don't set your Y max right, you're not going to be able to see the top of the bar. So I can't see the top of the bar. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pinch until I can see the bar. Now I don't really want to adjust the width of it, and I'm doing that. So I need to pinch straight up and down, pinching down like that until I can see the entire thing. Now what I did accidentally was I did pinch the width. So I'm going to try to adjust it back so that the right one of my bars comes to about 55. There we go, because that was my maximum value, and that should be about right. So right now I have it to where you can see the left bar is at 5, the right, in other words, the minimum value. The right bar is at 55, the maximum value. And when I let go of the screen, I bumped it a little bit, but you saw that it was pretty close. To get it just right, you might have to play with it. And then if you're wanting to put this into a document or something, you can do a screenshot of this. Okay, so let me hit the trace button down there at the bottom and show you kind of how we can use that. So if I pull the trace up, I'm just using my finger on my touch screen. Okay, this is showing that the middle of the bar is around 10. The 3.04 tells me that between the values of 5 and 15, the frequency of the data in there is 3. It says 3.04, but that's because I'm just not exactly right on. So for the next one, it looks like between 15 and 25, we have a frequency of 7. Between 25 and 35, our frequency is is 9. From 35 to 45, the frequency is 5. And then from 45 to 55, the frequency is 2. Okay? So, from here, I could either just reproduce it on a piece of paper if I was doing homework. I could do a screenshot of it and paste it into like a Google Doc or something along those lines. But this is how you can make a histogram from data that you put in using the stat button on CALC 84, or in a very similar way on a TI 84.